Ambassador Tay checked his reflection one more time in the polished metal wall of the diplomatic vessel. His formal uniform was perfect. Every button in place. Every crease sharp. This meeting had to go well. Humanity's future in the Galactic Council depended on it. The Vrothari were the most powerful species in 3 sectors, and if they rejected humanity, no other species would dare accept them. He turned to see his daughters sitting on the bench behind him. Juno, his 16-year-old, was reviewing something on her tablet, her face serious and focused. Little Hana sat beside her, swinging her legs back and forth, unable to reach the floor. She was only 6 years old and shouldn't be here at all. "Remember what I told you both," Tay said quietly. "Stay quiet. Stay still. The Vrothari are not like other species we've met. They're predators. Very dangerous predators." "I know, Dad," Juno said without looking up. Hana nodded, her small hands folded in her lap. Tay's heart ached. His wife would have known what to do. She would have found childcare, made arrangements, done something other than bring their children to such a dangerous meeting. But she was gone now. 2 years passed, and he was doing his best alone. When the childcare provider canceled at the last moment, he had no choice but to bring them along. The door chimed. A robotic voice announced that the Vrothari delegation had arrived. Tay straightened his uniform one last time. "Stay behind me. Don't make any sudden moves." Tay. 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 The massive doors slid open with a soft hiss. The Vrothari were enormous. That was Tay's first thought as Chieftain Velrax stepped into the chamber. The alien stood nearly 9 feet tall, his body covered in overlapping scales that looked like polished obsidian. 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on his face tracked Tay's every movement. His mouth held rows of sharp teeth that were visible even when his jaws were closed. Behind him came more Vrothari, each one equally massive and intimidating. But it was the smaller forms that caught Tay's attention. 4 young Vrothari followed the adults, each about the size of a large earth dog. They had the same black scales as the adults, but with a slight iridescence that caught the light. Their eyes were proportionally larger than the adults, giving them an almost curious appearance. "Ambassador Tay." Chieftain Velrax's voice rumbled through the chamber, deep and resonant. His translator device rendered the words in perfect, standard English. "I am Chieftain Velrax of the Vrothari Collective. These are my advisors and our young ones. We bring them to learn the ways of diplomacy." Tay bowed his head respectfully, keeping his movements slow and controlled. "Chieftain Velrax, on behalf of humanity, I welcome you. It is an honor to meet you and your people." The Vrothari cubs were staring at him with open curiosity. One of them made a soft, chirping sound, and an adult quickly silenced it with a low growl. Velrax's 4 eyes shifted to look behind Tay. "You bring your own young to this meeting. Interesting. Are they also learning your diplomatic ways?" Tay felt his stomach drop. "I apologize, Chieftain. Circumstances required their presence. They will not interfere." The sound Velrax made was impossible to interpret. "Let us proceed with the formalities." The next hour was tense. Tay presented humanity's credentials and history, carefully avoiding any mention of Earth's many wars and conflicts. He emphasized humanity's technological achievements, their adaptability, their desire for peaceful cooperation. Velrax listened without expression, occasionally asking questions that Tay did his best to answer honestly. Behind him, Tay could feel his daughter's presence. Juno was perfectly still, but he knew Hana must be getting restless. 6-year-olds weren't meant to sit quietly for hours. The Vrothari cubs were also growing restless. They shifted on their feet, occasionally glancing at each other or at the small human children behind the ambassador. One of them kept sniffing the air, its nostrils flaring. Tay was in the middle of explaining humanity's cultural diversity when he heard it. A tiny sound behind him. A sniffle. His blood went cold. Hana's allergies. He'd forgotten about her allergies. The ship's recycled air often triggered them, and he'd forgotten to give her the medication this morning in his rush to prepare for the meeting. And so you see, Chieftain, humanity's strength comes from our ability to— The sneeze was explosive. In the quiet chamber, it sounded like a thunderclap. Achoo! Everything stopped. The adult Vrathari froze, their bodies going rigid. 4 pairs of eyes snapped toward the source of the sound. Their scales seemed to ripple, and their claws extended slightly from their hands. Every predator instinct in their bodies had activated at the sudden, unexpected noise. Tay's heart hammered in his chest. He started to turn, to step between his daughter and the aliens. But he moved too slowly. The Vrathari cubs moved first. In a blur of motion that Tay's eyes could barely follow, all 4 young Vrathari rushed forward. But they didn't attack. Instead, they surrounded Hana, forming a tight circle with their bodies facing outward. Their small spines raised along their backs, and they made a series of soft, chirping sounds. Tay froze, his mind unable to process what he was seeing. Behind the circle of cubs, he could just barely see Hana's small form. She was looking up at the aliens around her with wide, watery eyes, her nose red from the sneeze. Juno had stood up, her hand reaching for her sister, but she stopped short, clearly as confused as everyone else. The adult Vrathari were staring at their cubs with what could only be described as shock. Chieftain Velrax's 4 eyes were wide, and his scales had flattened against his body. Kresh, Velrax said slowly, addressing the largest of the cubs. Return to my side. Now, the cub named Kresh didn't move. Instead, he made a low thrumming sound and pressed closer to Hana. Another adult, Vrathari, smaller than Velrax but wearing what looked like scientific instruments, stepped forward. Chieftain, this is highly irregular. I can see that, Scholar Rickson, Velrax replied, his voice tight. Hana sniffled again, her eyes still watering from the sneeze. The sound made all 4 cubs shift closer to her, their protective stance tightening. Tay found his voice. I apologize, Chieftain. My daughter has allergies. The sneeze was involuntary. I assure you, she meant no disrespect or threat. We are aware she is not a threat, Velrax said slowly. What we do not understand is why our cubs have formed a protection circle around her. This behavior is reserved for our own injured or threatened young. Scholar Rickson pulled out a small device and aimed it at Hana. The device made soft beeping sounds. The scholar's eyes widened as he read the results. Chieftain, Rickson said quietly. The readings are remarkable. The small human is emitting biochemical markers that register on our sensors as extreme vulnerability. Our cubs are responding to her as they would to a newborn Vrathari in distress. What? Velrax stepped closer, his massive form looming over the scene. That is impossible. She is clearly not Vrathari. No, but to their senses, she appears to require protection. Rickson adjusted his device. Human children must be far more vulnerable than we realized. Inside the circle of cubs, Hana looked up at the young Vrathari surrounding her. Her eyes were still watery, and a tear rolled down her cheek from the irritation of her allergies. She sniffled again. The largest cub, Kresh, lowered his head and gently nudged Hana with his snout. The thrumming sound he made grew louder, and somehow, it seemed to calm her. Hana reached up with one tiny hand and touched the scales on his face. They were warm and smooth under her fingers. Hi, Hana whispered, her voice small and uncertain. All 4 cubs made soft, chirping sounds. One of them, a female, with silver-tipped scales, gently pressed against Hana's side, as if to keep her warm. Juno slowly knelt down, her movements careful. Hana, are you okay? They're nice, Juno, Hana said softly. They're keeping me safe. Tay watched his youngest daughter sitting in the center of a protective circle of alien predators, and his mind struggled to understand what was happening. These were creatures that could tear a human apart without effort. These were the young of the most feared species in the known galaxy, and they were treating his 6-year-old daughter like she was precious. Chieftain Velrax was silent for a long moment, his 4 eyes moving from the cubs to Hana to Tay. Finally, he spoke. Ambassador Tay, your offspring is very small. How does your species survive with young so vulnerable? Tay swallowed hard. We protect each other, Chieftain. Even the smallest of us. Especially the smallest of us. Velrax's expression was impossible to read, but something in his posture shifted. He made a gesture to his attendants, a complex movement of his clawed hands. We must consult, he said. This changes many things. We will reconvene tomorrow. He turned to leave but paused at the door. Scholar Rickson will remain to ensure the cubs do not harm the small one, though I suspect that is not a concern. As the adult Vrathari filed out, the cubs remained exactly where they were, their protective circle intact around Hana. She had stopped crying and was now gently petting Kresh's scales, fascinated by the texture. Tay looked at Juno, who looked back at him with the same question in her eyes. Dad, she whispered. Why are they protecting her? I thought they were predators. Tay had no answer. He could only watch as his smallest daughter sat safely in a circle of alien cubs, all of them watching over her as if she were the most precious thing in the universe. Scholar Rickson stood in the corner of the chamber, his scanning device pointed at the strange scene before him. The 4 Vrathari cubs still surrounded the tiny human child, refusing to move even though 2 hours had passed since the other adults left. The small human girl sat cross-legged on the floor, looking up at the cubs with curiosity instead of fear. Tay sat nearby with Juno, both of them tense and ready to act if needed. But the cubs showed no signs of aggression. If anything, they seemed completely devoted to keeping Hana safe and comfortable. This is fascinating, Rickson murmured, his eyes fixed on his device's readings. Absolutely fascinating. Mining. What exactly is fascinating? Tay asked carefully. And more importantly, is my daughter in danger? Rickson looked up, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. Danger? No, Ambassador. Your offspring is possibly the safest human in the entire galaxy at this moment. What is fascinating is why. He approached slowly, keeping his movements gentle so as not to alarm anyone. The cubs tracked him but didn't react aggressively. They knew Rickson and trusted him. May I explain what my scans have revealed? Rickson asked. Please do, Tay said. His hands were gripping his knees so tightly his knuckles had turned white. Rickson tapped his device, and a holographic display appeared in the air. It showed various charts and graphs that meant nothing to Tay. Humans emit certain biochemical markers, Rickson began. All species do. These markers tell us things about age, health, emotional state, and threat level. When I scanned your daughter, the readings were remarkable. He adjusted the display. To Vrathari senses, human children register as extremely vulnerable. More vulnerable than any species we have encountered. Your young have thin skin with no protective covering, fragile bones, no natural weapons, no venom, no armor, slow movement. Poor sensory awareness compared to most species. We know humans are physically weak, Tay said quietly. That's not news to us. Ah. But here is what makes it remarkable, Rickson continued. The Vrathari evolved as pack predators. We hunt. Yes. But we also protect our pack. We have a very strong instinct to protect vulnerable members, especially young ones. This instinct is even stronger in cubs, who have not yet learned to control it with logic and reasoning. He gestured toward where Hana sat with the cubs. Your daughter triggered every protective instinct our cubs possess. To them, she reads as a vulnerable member of the pack, who needs constant protection. They cannot help themselves. Their biology demands they keep her safe. Juno leaned forward. So they think she's one of them? Not exactly, Rickson said. They know she is not Vrathari. But their instincts do not care about species. They only care about vulnerability and the need for protection. When she sneezed, making a distress sound while displaying signs of physical vulnerability, their instincts took over completely. Tay watched his daughter reach out to touch the scales of the cub nearest to her. The cub, the female, with silver-tipped scales, leaned into the touch and made a pleased chirping sound. "That's Thora," Rickson said. "She is the most nurturing of the four. Kresh is the protective one. Vin and Liss are siblings, always working together." As if hearing their names, two other cubs shifted positions slightly, maintaining their protective formation while adjusting to give Hana more comfort. "Can we separate them?" Tay asked. "Will they let Hana leave?" "They will not harm her," Rickson assured him, "but they will be distressed if she leaves their sight. May I suggest we allow this bonding to continue? It could be valuable for the diplomatic process." Before Tay could respond, Hana sneezed again. Immediately, all four cubs pressed closer, making soothing sounds. Kresh lowered his head and nudged her gently, the same thrumming sound rumbling from his chest. "Papa," Hana called out, "can you bring my medicine? My nose is itchy." Tay stood up slowly and approached. The cubs watched him but didn't move to stop him. He pulled the allergy medication from his pocket and knelt down beside his daughter, reaching between two of the cubs. "Here, sweetie. This will help." Hana took the medicine and swallowed it. "Thank you, Papa." She looked up at the cubs surrounding her. "They're nice. Can they be my friends?" "I think they already decided that on their own," Tay said softly. Kresh made a sound and touched his nose to Hana's forehead. The gesture was surprisingly gentle for a creature with such obvious strength and predatory features. "What is he doing?" Juno asked Rickson. "Scent marking," the scholar explained. "He is claiming her as part of his pack. The others will do the same. It is a bonding behavior." True to his words, each cub took turns gently touching their noses to Hana, making soft sounds. Hana giggled at the sensation. "They're tickly," she said, smiling for the first time since the meeting started. The door opened, and Chieftain Velrax entered with several other adult Vrathari. They all stopped when they saw the scene, their eyes widening. "They are still in formation," one of the advisors said quietly. "The cubs have not moved in over 2 hours." Velrax approached slowly. His massive size made Tay instinctively want to step between him and Hana, but he forced himself to remain calm. The cubs, however, had no such restraint. Their spines raised slightly, and they positioned themselves more firmly around Hana. "Easy, young ones," Velrax said in the Vrathari language. "I mean no harm." The cubs relaxed, but only slightly. They trusted their chieftain, but their protective instincts were stronger. Velrax looked at Tay. "Ambassador, I have consulted with my council. This situation is unprecedented. Never in our history have our cubs shown such strong protective behavior toward an alien species. We must understand what this means. Scholar Rickson has been explaining the science to us," Tay said. "Science can tell us what is happening," Velrax replied, "but it cannot tell us what we should do about it. The Vrathari do not take pack bonds lightly. If our cubs have claimed your offspring as one to be protected, then we as adults are bound by that claim. It is our way." He paused, his four eyes studying Hana carefully. "Your young are very vulnerable. How has your species survived?" Tay stood up to his full height, though he was still much shorter than the Vrathari chieftain. "Humans are vulnerable individually, but we are strong together. We build tools. We create technology. We form communities. We protect each other, especially our children. Our weakness in body is balanced by our strength in mind and heart." Velrax was quiet for a long moment. Then he gestured to one of his attendants, who brought forward a data tablet. "We have been studying your species' history since this morning," Velrax said. "Your technological advancement is impressive. Your medical science especially so. You have learned to compensate for your physical limitations in remarkable ways." He scrolled through information on the tablet. "You care for your sick and injured. You dedicate vast resources to protecting your young. You have systems to ensure even the weakest members of your society can survive and contribute. This is very similar to Vrathari values, though our methods are different. Vrathari, we believe every life has value, Tay said carefully. Even the smallest, weakest life. Show me, Velrax said suddenly. Show me how humans care for their vulnerable. Tay was confused for a moment, but then he understood. He pulled out his own tablet and began showing images and videos from Earth. He showed hospitals where humans cared for the sick, schools where children learned, communities where people helped each other, playgrounds where small children played safely while adults watched over them. The Vrathari gathered around, watching intently. The cubs, still surrounding Hana, also seemed interested in the moving images. This is a human family, Tay explained, showing a video of a father teaching his young daughter to ride a bicycle. The child is learning a new skill. She falls many times, but the parent stays close to catch her. He protects her while she learns. The parent shows great patience, Velrax observed, and the young one shows determination despite her failures. That's how humans grow, Tay said. We are born vulnerable, but we learn. We adapt. We become strong not through physical power, but through knowledge and cooperation. Hana was now showing the cubs something on Juno's tablet. She had pulled up a simple drawing program and was making colorful pictures. The cubs watched with fascination, their heads tilting as she explained what she was creating. This is a flower, Hana said, pointing to a red blob on the screen. And this is a tree. And this is my house on Earth. Kresh made an interested sound and touched the screen with one claw, accidentally making a mark. Hana giggled. You can draw too. Here, try making a circle. Under her patient instruction, the cub carefully drew a shaky circle on the screen. All 4 cubs seemed pleased with this accomplishment, making excited chirping sounds. Velrax watched this interaction with intense interest. The small one teaches, and our cubs learn. This is also unprecedented. Human children are naturally curious and social, Juno said, speaking up for the first time. Hana loves teaching. She teaches her stuffed animals at home all the time. Stuffed animals? Velrax asked. Juno explained the concept of toys, and several Vrathari seemed genuinely surprised that humans created objects specifically for their children to play with. Your species invests heavily in the happiness of your young, Rixon observed. Not just their survival, but their emotional well-being. Fascinating. The rest of the day passed in a strange but peaceful way. The cubs gradually became more comfortable, though they never completely abandoned their protective positions around Hana. They played simple games with her, learned to be gentle when they touched her, and made sounds of distress whenever she seemed uncomfortable. When Hana needed to use the bathroom, all 4 cubs tried to follow her. It took Juno several minutes to convince them that Hana would be safe and would return. Even then, they waited right outside the door, making worried sounds. As evening approached, Velrax made an announcement. The cubs have bonded with the small human. This cannot be undone quickly. I propose we continue these meetings over several days. Let us see what we can learn from each other. Tay agreed, though he was exhausted from the stress of the day. Will the cubs return to your quarters? They will try to stay with your offspring, Velrax predicted. But we will manage. Tomorrow, perhaps you can tell us more about how humans have survived despite such vulnerability. As the Vrathari prepared to leave, the cubs had to be coaxed away from Hana. They made sad sounds and kept looking back at her. Hana waved goodbye to them. See you tomorrow, she called out. We can draw more pictures. The cubs chirped in response, clearly pleased by this promise. After they left, Tay sat down heavily in a chair. Juno sat beside him, and Hana climbed into his lap, tired from the unusual day. Papa, Hana said sleepily. The cubs are nice. They smell funny, but they're warm. Yes, they are, Tay agreed, holding his daughter close. He looked at Juno. What just happened today? Juno shook her head. I think we just made the galaxy's most unlikely friends. Tay held Hana tighter. His smallest daughter had somehow done what no diplomat could have planned. She had bridged the gap between species simply by being herself. Vulnerable and small and kind. Maybe that was humanity's real strength after all. 3 days had passed since the first meeting, and the diplomatic vessel had become an unexpected playground. Hana sat in the center of the common room, surrounded by the 4 Vrathari cubs, who had not left her side, except when absolutely necessary. They were teaching her a Vrathari game that involved tossing a soft ball and catching it with their mouths. Like this, Kresh demonstrated, catching the ball gently and bringing it back to Hana. His movements were so careful now, so controlled. It had taken him a full day to learn not to accidentally knock Hana over with his enthusiasm. Good job, Hana praised, patting his scaled head. Kresh thrummed with pleasure at her approval. Juno sat nearby, always watching. Her tablet was forgotten in her lap as she observed the impossible friendship developing before her eyes. The cubs had learned so much about being gentle. They retracted their claws around Hana. They moved slowly and carefully. They had learned to recognize when their size or strength might hurt her. Juno, come play, Hana called out. I'm watching, remember? Juno replied. The cubs keep me safe, Hana said matter-of-factly. They always do. It was true. The cubs had developed an almost obsessive need to protect Hana. When she walked, they walked with her, forming a living barrier around her small body. When she sat, they arranged themselves in a protective circle. When she slept during nap time, they lay down beside her, their warm bodies keeping her comfortable. Thora, the female with silver-tipped scales, approached Juno. The cub made a questioning sound and nudged Juno's hand with her nose. You want me to play too? Juno asked. Thora chirped and grabbed Juno's sleeve gently in her mouth, tugging. Juno laughed and stood up. Okay, I'll play. The cubs seemed delighted to have both human sisters in their game. They adjusted the rules to account for the humans' lack of sharp teeth and slower reflexes. When Juno missed a catch, Vin and Liss made encouraging sounds instead of the competitive growls they used with each other. Ambassador Tay entered the room with Chieftain Velrax and Scholar Rixon. All 3 stopped to watch the scene. Your offspring have adapted to each other remarkably well, Velrax observed. I never thought I'd see my daughters playing with predators, Tay admitted. But I've never seen Hana so happy. Usually she's shy around new people. The cubs are not people, Velrax said. But perhaps that makes it easier for her. They have no expectations. They simply accept her as she is. Rixon was busy with his scanning device as always. The bond has strengthened considerably. The cub's protective instincts have now extended to the older human sister as well. They are beginning to see both offspring as part of their pack. Is that normal? Tay asked. Pack bonding usually takes months, Rixon explained. But cubs form attachments more quickly than adults. And humans seem to trigger these instincts very powerfully. Your species has many traits that Vrathari biology interprets as needing protection. In the play area, Hana had tripped over her own feet and fallen to the floor. Before Juno could even react, all 4 cubs had rushed to her side. Making distressed sounds, they sniffed her carefully, checking for injuries. I'm okay, Hana assured them, sitting up. I just fell down. It happens all the time. But the cubs were not satisfied. They inspected every inch of her, their noses working overtime. When they found a small red mark on her knee, where she had bumped the floor, they made sounds of deep concern. It's just a little bump, Hana said. See? It doesn't even hurt. Kresh made a low, sad sound and gently licked the small mark. Hana giggled. That tickles. Velrax watched this with a strange expression. She heals slowly. What? Tay looked at him, confused. Vrathari cubs heal within hours from minor injuries, days from major ones. Your offspring takes days to heal from a small bump? Velrax seemed genuinely troubled by this. Yes, Tay said slowly. Human healing is much slower than most species. It's one of our many vulnerabilities. Tay, remarkable that your species survived at all, Velrax said. But his tone was not mocking. It was respectful. You must be very careful with your young. We are, Tay assured him. Humans spend years caring for their children. They need constant protection and teaching before they can survive on their own. How many years? Usually 16 to 18 years before they are considered adults. Sometimes longer. Velrax's 4 eyes widened. Vrathari cubs are independent in 3 years. 18 years of constant care? The resources required must be enormous. We believe it's worth it, Tay said quietly. Rixon had approached the cubs and was scanning Hana's knee. The injury is superficial. It will heal naturally in approximately 5 days. 5 days! Kresh made a sound of distress. The other cubs huddled closer to Hana, as if their presence could speed her healing. I have medicine that can help, Rixon offered. It is designed for Vrathari, but I can adjust it for human biology. That would be kind, thank you, Tay said. As Rixon applied a healing gel to Hana's knee, the cubs watched intently, learning. When he was done, Thora sniffed the gel and made an approving sound. It seemed to satisfy her that something was being done to help Hana heal. Over the next hours, the cubs began asking questions. Their translator devices had improved at rendering their chirps and growls into standard English, though their speech was still simple and direct. Why no claws? Vin asked, touching Hana's small fingers with his own clawed hand, being very careful not to scratch her. Humans don't have claws, Hana explained patiently. We use tools instead. See? She picked up a stylus and showed him how she could draw with it. Tools strange, Liss observed, but useful. Hana was delighted to teach. She showed them spoons for eating, brushes for hair, and shoes for protecting feet. Each item fascinated the cubs, who had never needed such things. Humans soft everywhere, Kresh said, gently touching Hana's arm. No hard scales. How you stay safe? We stay safe by being smart and by helping each other, Juno explained, joining the conversation. And by making things that protect us. Like walls? Thora asked. And buildings? Yes, exactly, Juno said, pleased that the cub understood. The cubs exchanged looks, communicating in ways the humans couldn't quite follow. Then Kresh spoke again. Humans smart, humans kind, but humans very breakable. Need much protection. We do our best to protect ourselves, Juno said. We protect too, Kresh said firmly. You in our pack now. We keep you safe. The simple declaration made Tay's throat tight with emotion. These alien creatures, who had known his daughters for only 3 days, had claimed them as family. Velrax and his advisors had been watching and listening to everything. Now the chieftain approached the group, his massive form casting a shadow over them all. The cubs looked up at him but did not move away from their protective positions around the human children. Ambassador Tai, Velrax said formally. I have been observing your offspring and our cubs. I have learned much about humans in these 3 days. More than months of reports and data could have taught me. What have you learned? Tay asked carefully. I have learned that strength comes in many forms. The Vrathari are strong in body. We can hunt, fight, survive in harsh conditions. But your species has a different strength. You survive through cooperation, through innovation, through caring for your weakest members instead of leaving them behind. Velrax gestured to where Hana was now teaching Thora how to stack blocks into a tower. Your smallest offspring teaches our cubs patience and creativity. Your older offspring teaches them gentleness and understanding. These are skills we, Vrathari, value, but struggle to teach. Our cubs are warriors in training, one of the advisors added. They learn to hunt and fight from a young age, but they do not learn to be gentle. They do not learn to care for the vulnerable. Your species teaches these things naturally. Scholar Rixon stepped forward. I have been analyzing the interactions. Human children have remarkable social intelligence. Your offspring can read emotions, adjust behavior based on context, and form bonds across species barriers. These are sophisticated survival skills. Humans are social creatures, Tay agreed. We need each other. We evolved to live in groups, to cooperate, to communicate. It's how we compensated for our physical weakness. Velrox nodded slowly. The Galactic Council asked us to evaluate whether humanity deserves a place among the starfaring species. They wanted to know if humans are strong enough to survive in a dangerous galaxy. Tay's heart raced. This was it. The judgment they had been working toward. But they asked the wrong question. Velrax continued. The question is not whether humans are strong. The question is whether the galaxy is wise enough to recognize different forms of strength. He placed one large clawed hand over his chest, in what Tay had learned was a Vrathari gesture of sincerity. The Vrathari recognize strength when we see it. Your species is strong, Ambassador Tay. Strong in ways we respect and admire. Before Tay could respond, Hana called out, Papa, look, I taught Thora to build a tower. Everyone turned to look. Thora had indeed stacked several blocks into a wobbly tower. Her claws made the task difficult, but she had managed it. The other cubs chirped with approval and excitement. Very good, Thora, Hana praised. Now we can knock it down and build it again. She gently pushed the tower, and the blocks scattered. The cubs immediately began gathering them, ready to build again. It was a simple game, but the cubs played it with total dedication. Your offspring finds joy in simple things, Velrax observed, and she shares that joy freely with others. This is a gift. Hana has always been like that, Juno said softly. Even after Mom died, she kept smiling. She kept finding reasons to be happy. She helped Dad and me remember how to be happy too. Velrax looked at Tay with new understanding. You raise your offspring alone? My wife died 2 years ago, Tay said quietly. I do my best. A pack should not be so small, Velrax said. Among the Vrathari, when a parent is lost, the pack surrounds the remaining family. They help raise the young. They share the burden. Humans do that too, Tay said. We have family, friends, communities. But I wanted to keep my daughters close. Maybe that was selfish. Not selfish. Protective. I understand this instinct. Velrax watched the cubs playing with Hana. Pack bonds are sacred to us. The cubs have claimed your offspring. By our laws and traditions, that means the Vrathari people have claimed them as well. You are under our protection now. Tay felt tears prick his eyes. I don't know what to say. Say you will continue teaching us about humanity. Velrax replied. Say you will let the cubs continue this bond. There is much we can learn from each other. Yes, Tay said without hesitation. Yes, we will. Hana ran over to her father, the cubs following close behind. Papa, can Kresh and the others come visit Earth? I want to show them my room and my toys and the park near our house. The cubs chirped excitedly at this idea, their eyes bright with interest. Velrax looked at Tay. Would your world welcome Vrathari cubs? If they're with my daughters, they'll be welcomed, Tay said firmly. I'll make sure of it. The chieftain's expression was impossible to read, but something in his posture suggested satisfaction. Then we will make arrangements. The cubs should see the homeworld of their new pack members. As the day ended and everyone prepared to return to their quarters, the cubs had to be convinced once again to leave Hana's side. They had gotten better at it over the 3 days, but they still made sad sounds and kept looking back. Tomorrow, Hana promised them. We'll play again tomorrow. That night, as Tay tucked his daughters into bed, Juno said, Dad, I think something amazing is happening. I think you're right, Tay agreed. The cubs really love Hana. And I think she loves them too. Hana was already half asleep, but she smiled. They're my best friends, she murmured. Tay kissed her forehead. Sweet dreams, little one. As he turned off the lights, he thought about Velrax's words. Different forms of strength. Maybe that was what humanity brought to the galaxy. Not physical power, but something else. Something equally valuable. He just hoped it would be enough. The fourth day started normally. Hana woke up excited to see the cubs, ate her breakfast quickly, and practically dragged her father to the common room where the Vrathari waited. The cubs greeted her with their usual enthusiasm, chirping and thrumming and forming their protective circle around her. Tay had become comfortable with the routine. He sat with Velrax and the other adults, discussing trade possibilities and cultural exchanges, while the cubs played with his daughters. Rickson continued his endless scanning and note-taking, documenting this unprecedented bonding between species. But something was different today. Tay noticed that Hana seemed more tired than usual. She was quieter, less energetic in her play. She sat down more often, and her breathing seemed slightly off. "Hana, are you feeling okay?" Juno asked, noticing the same thing. "I'm fine," Hana said, but her voice was smaller than usual. Just a little tired. The cubs had noticed too. They pressed closer to her, making concerned sounds. Kresh sniffed her carefully, his nostrils flaring. "Something wrong," Kresh announced. "Small pack member not right." Before anyone could respond, Hana started coughing. It was a harsh, wheezing cough that made her small body shake. Her face began to turn red. Tay was on his feet instantly, rushing to his daughter. "Hana, what's wrong?" Hana tried to answer but couldn't catch her breath. She gasped, her hands going to her throat. Her eyes went wide with fear. "She can't breathe," Juno said, her voice rising in panic. "Dad, she can't breathe." The cubs exploded into distressed sounds, high-pitched calls that echoed through the chamber. Within seconds, every Vrathari on the ship was running toward the common room. Responding to the cubs' alarm, Tay scooped Hana into his arms. Her lips were turning blue. She was having a severe allergic reaction, worse than anything he'd seen before. Her throat was swelling shut. "Medical bay," Tay shouted. "Now." "The human medical bay is 3 levels away," Rickson said urgently. "That is at least 5 minutes." "She doesn't have 5 minutes," Juno cried, looking at her sister's face. Hana was struggling desperately to breathe, her small chest heaving. Velrax appeared in the doorway, taking in the scene instantly. "Our medical bay is 2 doors away. 30 seconds. But your medicine is for Vrathari," Tay said, even as he started moving. "It might not work on humans. It might make things worse. If we do nothing, she dies," Velrax stated bluntly. "If we try, she might live. Choose quickly, Ambassador." Tay looked at his youngest daughter. Her struggles were getting weaker. She was suffocating in his arms. "Do it," Tay said, his voice breaking. "Please, save her." They ran. Tay had never seen creatures as large as the Vrathari move so fast. Velrax led the way, his massive form clearing a path. The cubs ran alongside Tay, their distress calls never stopping. The Vrathari medical bay was nothing like a human hospital. Everything was sized for creatures 3 times as large as humans. The equipment looked alien and frightening. But Medmaster Kor, the ship's doctor, was already there, preparing. "Place her here," Kor commanded, gesturing to a medical platform. Tay laid Hana down gently. She wasn't struggling anymore. Her eyes were half closed. Her breathing almost stopped. She was dying. "What is happening to her?" Kor demanded, his clawed hands already moving over Hana's small body. "Allergic reaction," Tay said quickly. "Anaphylaxis. Her immune system is attacking her body. Her throat is swelling shut. She needs epinephrine, antihistamines, corticosteroids. I do not have human medications," Kor said, his 4 eyes scanning Hana with practiced efficiency. "But I have equivalents. They are designed for Vrathari biology. The dosing will be difficult. Try," Tay begged. "Please try." The cubs had pressed against a transparent barrier that separated them from the medical area. Their faces were pressed to the clear surface, their eyes fixed on Hana. They made constant distressed sounds, their bodies trembling. Kor worked with incredible speed, his large, clawed hands surprisingly delicate. He attached monitoring devices to Hana's small body, adjusted equipment designed for beings 10 times her size, and prepared medications that had never been tested on humans. "This is an anti-inflammatory compound," Kor explained rapidly. "It should reduce the swelling in her breathing passages. But the dosage for something so small, with unknown biology." "She weighs 19 kilograms, Tay said quickly. "Her heart rate is usually 80 beats per minute. Her blood pressure." Kor absorbed the information, his mind calculating. "I am adjusting for mass and estimated metabolic rate. But I cannot promise this will work." "I understand," Tay whispered. "Just try." The injection looked enormous compared to Hana's small arm, but Kor was precise. The medication entered her bloodstream. Everyone waited. Seconds passed. Hana didn't respond. Her chest barely moved. The cub's cries grew more desperate. Thora was scratching at the barrier, trying to reach Hana. Vin and Liss were making sounds that resembled weeping. Kresh stood rigid, his entire body shaking with the effort of not breaking through the barrier. "Come on, baby," Juno whispered, tears streaming down her face. More seconds passed. Hana's lips were completely blue now. Tay couldn't watch but couldn't look away. Then, impossibly, Hana coughed. It was a small sound, barely noticeable, but it was there. Her chest moved slightly more. Another cough. Then, a gasp, as air entered her lungs. "It's working," Kor said, his voice filled with something like wonder. "The swelling is reducing. Her airways are opening." He administered another dose, this one smaller. Then he placed an oxygen mask over Hana's face, adjusted for her size. The mask was too big, but Kor held it carefully in place. Hana's breathing steadied. Color slowly returned to her face. Her eyes fluttered open, confused and frightened. "Papa?" she whispered, her voice barely audible through the mask. Tay couldn't speak. He could only nod, tears streaming down his face. The cub's distress calls changed to sounds of relief. They pressed harder against the barrier, desperate to reach their pack member. Kor continued monitoring Hana for what felt like hours but was probably only 30 minutes. Finally, he stepped back. "She is stable," he announced. "The reaction has been controlled. Her breathing is nearly normal. She will need observation, but I believe she will survive." The relief in the room was overwhelming. Juno collapsed into a chair, her entire body shaking with sobs. Tay finally allowed himself to breathe properly. Velrax approached slowly. "Your offspring is strong, Ambassador." She fought hard. "Can the cubs see her?" Tay asked. "They need to know she's okay." Velrax considered, then nodded. "Briefly. But they must be calm." The barrier was lowered, and the cubs rushed forward. But something remarkable happened. Despite their desperate need to reach Hana, they controlled themselves. They approached slowly, carefully, as if afraid they might hurt her. They sniffed her gently, making soft, soothing sounds. Hana reached out with one small hand and touched Kresh's face. All 4 cubs pressed close, their warm bodies surrounding her with care. They thrummed their calming sounds, and Hana's eyes began to close, exhausted from her ordeal. "She needs rest," Kor said. "She must stay here for observation. The environmental controls in this bay are more suitable for her biology than the common areas. I can adjust the air filtration to prevent further reactions." "Thank you," Tay said, his voice thick with emotion. Kor's expression was difficult to read, but he seemed affected by the situation. "I am a healer. It is my purpose, but I have never worked on something so small, so fragile. I was afraid I would fail." "You didn't fail," Juno said firmly. "You saved my sister." Velrax had been standing silently, watching everything. Now, he moved forward. His massive form, somehow not threatening despite its size, Ambassador Tay, he said formally. Your offspring nearly died because our ship's environment was not suitable for her needs. This is unacceptable. It's not your fault. Tay started to say, but Velrax raised one clawed hand. If one clawed, she is a cub under Vrathari protection. That means we must ensure her safety and comfort. I am ordering immediate modifications to this vessel's environmental systems. The air will be filtered for human-compatible elements. Temperature and humidity will be adjusted. Whatever is needed to keep your offspring safe will be done. One of his advisors started to protest. Great Chieftain, to reconfigure our entire vessel for one small... Velrax turned on the advisor, and his voice carried a weight of command that made everyone in the room freeze. She is a CUB. Velrax roared. She is under the protection of our young, which means she is under my protection. We do not debate the safety of cubs. We do not calculate the cost of their lives. We do whatever is necessary to keep them safe. Is this understood? The advisor bowed immediately. Yes, Great Chieftain. I will begin the modifications at once. Velrax turned back to Tay, and his voice was gentler. Forgive my outburst. But the Vrathari take protection of young very seriously. Your daughter is young. She is vulnerable. She nearly died. This will not happen again. Tay felt something break inside him, all the fear and stress of the last hours overwhelming him. He found himself unable to speak, only able to nod. Juno stepped forward and did something that surprised everyone. She bowed her head to Velrax, in the Vrathari style she had observed. Thank you, Chieftain, she said clearly. You honor my sister and my family. Velrax returned the bow, a gesture of respect between equals. Your sister has taught our cubs much about gentleness and joy. We owe her a debt. Problem 7. Absent. R. Cumbrant. R over. R-O. As night fell on the ship, Hana slept peacefully in the medical bay, surrounded by monitoring equipment and 4 devoted Vrathari cubs who refused to leave her side. Kor had given up trying to remove them and instead simply worked around them. Tay and Juno sat nearby, exhausted but unable to leave. Velrax had also remained, standing guard like a massive sentinel. The council will receive my report tomorrow, Velrax said quietly. They asked us to evaluate humanity, to determine if your species deserves a place among the star-faring peoples. Tay looked up at him, waiting. I will tell them that humanity is unlike any species we have encountered. I will tell them that humans are vulnerable in body but strong in spirit. That they create bonds across species barriers. That they inspire protection in those around them. That they survive not through strength of claw, but through strength of heart. Velrax's 4 eyes met Tay's too. I will recommend not just acceptance, but alliance. A formal pact of protection between our peoples. Tay felt tears threaten again. Why? Because of what happened today? No, Velrax said. Because of what your offspring did with that first sneeze. She was small, vulnerable, and afraid. But she did not show aggression or fear to my cubs. She showed curiosity and kindness. She taught them things we could not teach them. And when she nearly died, every being on this ship fought to save her. That is what humanity brings to the galaxy, Ambassador. The ability to make others care. In the medical bay, Hana stirred slightly in her sleep. Immediately, all 4 cubs adjusted their positions, ensuring she remained comfortable and warm. They love her, Juno said softly. Yes, Velrax agreed. And that changes everything. The Galactic Council chamber was enormous, designed to accommodate hundreds of species of varying sizes and biological needs. Ambassador Tay stood in the human delegation area, his hands clasped behind his back to hide their trembling. Beside him stood Juno, dressed in formal diplomatic attire, her face serious and mature beyond her 16 years. Behind them, In a specially prepared area with modified environmental controls, sat Hana. She was fully recovered now, breathing easily through an advanced filtration device that Core had designed specifically for her. And surrounding her, as always, were the 4 Vrathari cubs. The presence of the cubs in the council chamber had caused quite a stir. Many species had never seen young Vrathari before, as the warrior race typically kept their offspring away from diplomatic proceedings, but Velrax had insisted, and what the Vrathari chieftain insisted upon generally happened. The council speaker, a floating jellyfish-like creature named Amen, rippled with bioluminescent patterns as it called the session to order. "We gather today to hear the evaluation of humanity," Omen announced, its translator rendering the bioluminescent patterns into audible speech. "Chieftain Velrax of the Vrathari has completed the assessment. The council recognizes Chieftain Velrax." Velrax rose from his position, his massive form drawing every eye in the chamber. He moved to the central platform, and a holographic display activated around him. "Honored council members," Velrax began, his deep voice carrying through the chamber. "You asked the Vrathari to determine if humanity is worthy of joining the council. You wanted to know if they are strong enough to survive in our galaxy. You wanted proof of their capabilities and value." The holographic display showed images from the past week. Tay recognized scenes from the diplomatic vessel, moments he had lived through. "I will answer your questions," Velrax continued. "But first, I will show you what we discovered." The display showed the moment of Hana's first sneeze. The council chamber fell silent as they watched the cubs rush to protect her, forming their defensive circle. Murmurs rippled through the assembled species. "The human child sneezed," Velrax explained. "A simple bodily function. But to our cubs, it registered as a distress call from a vulnerable pack member. They responded with protective instincts stronger than any we have documented." The display changed, showing Hana playing with the cubs, teaching them to draw and stack blocks. It showed her patience, her gentleness, her joy. "This is Hana," Velrax said. "She is 6 years old. By Vrathari standards, she should not even exist. She has no natural defenses. No claws. No armor. No venom. Her bones are fragile. Her skin tears easily. Her immune system attacks her own body. She heals slowly. She requires constant care and protection." More images appeared, showing human cities, hospitals, schools. Yet humanity has not only survived but thrived. They have built civilizations. They have developed technologies that compensate for their physical limitations. They have created social systems that ensure even their weakest members can survive and contribute. The display showed the medical crisis, Hana's face blue and struggling. Several council members made sounds of distress. Then it showed Core working desperately to save her. The cubs pressed against the barrier in anguish. "This child nearly died on our vessel," Velrax said bluntly. "Our environment was not suitable for her biology. But look at what happened." The recording showed the ship's crew working through the night to modify environmental systems. It showed Vrathari engineers calculating and adjusting, all for one small human child. "We rebuilt our systems to keep her safe," Velrax said. "Not because it was required, not because of diplomatic necessity, but because our cubs had claimed her as pack, and the Vrathari do not abandon pack members." He paused, his 4 eyes sweeping across the assembled council. "You asked if humans are strong enough for our galaxy. I tell you this, humans are vulnerable. But they have something that many of us have lost. They have the ability to inspire protection in others. They create bonds that transcend biology and survival instinct." The display changed again, showing a new recording. It was from this morning. In the council building, Hana was showing a group of alien diplomats' children how to make paper airplanes. Young beings from a dozen different species were gathered around her, watching as she folded and demonstrated. The cubs sat protectively nearby, but they were relaxed, happy to see their pack member teaching others. "In 1 week," Velrax said, This small human child has formed bonds with Vrathari cubs, taught them gentleness and creativity, and survived a crisis that would have ended weaker beings. She represents what humanity brings to our galaxy: cooperation, innovation, and the strength that comes from caring for others. He turned to face the council speaker directly. The Vrathari recommend humanity's acceptance into the Galactic Council. Furthermore, we propose a formal alliance, a pact of protection. The chamber erupted in shocked sounds. A pact of protection was the highest honor the Vrathari could bestow. It meant complete military and technological support. It meant that an attack on humanity would be considered an attack on the Vrathari themselves. This is unprecedented. Amen flickered in surprise. A pact of protection is reserved for the Vrathari's closest allies. You have known humanity for only 1 week. 1 week was enough, Velrax said firmly. The Vrathari recognize strength in all its forms. Humans may be physically weak, but they are strong in ways that matter. They protect their young with dedication we respect. They form communities that care for vulnerable members. They innovate and adapt instead of simply relying on biological advantages. He gestured toward where Hana sat with the cubs. Any species that can inspire such loyalty from our young, creatures who know only honesty of instinct, is worthy of our protection. Our cubs have spoken with their actions. We, adults, merely follow their wisdom. Another council member spoke up, a reptilian being with multiple heads. But their vulnerability is a liability. They will require constant protection, constant accommodation. Why should we bear that burden? Before Velrax could respond, Hana stood up. The cubs immediately rose with her, forming their protective circle. But she gently patted Kresh and stepped forward slightly. "Excuse me," Hana said, her small voice amplified by the chamber's systems. The entire council fell silent, shocked that the human child had addressed them directly. Amen flickered rapidly, clearly uncertain about protocol. "Let her speak," Velrax said. "She has earned that right." Hana walked to the front of the platform, the cubs moving with her. She looked impossibly small on the vast stage, surrounded by beings many times her size. "My name is Hana," she said clearly. "I'm 6 years old. I know I'm small and weak. I get sick easily. I need help with lots of things. But that doesn't mean I'm useless." She held up her small hands. "I don't have claws, so I learned to make tools. I can't run fast, so I learned to think ahead. I get scared easily, so I learned to be brave anyway. And I can't protect myself alone, so I learned to make friends who will help me." She gestured to the cubs around her. "Kresh, Thora, Vin, and Liss are my friends. They're strong and fast and scary to some people. But I taught them how to draw and play games and be gentle. They taught me that being different doesn't mean we can't care about each other." Hana turned to face the full council. "Humans need help sometimes. But we give help too. We share what we know. We care about others. We try to make things better. Isn't that what friends do?" The chamber was absolutely silent. Then, unexpectedly, the cubs began to thrum their approval sound, loud and resonant. Within moments, several other species joined in with their own sounds of agreement. Tay felt his heart swell with pride. His smallest daughter, who should have been frightened of this massive assembly, had spoken with the clarity and honesty that only a child could manage. Omen flickered in a pattern that suggested thoughtfulness. The child speaks with wisdom beyond her years. The council will now vote on 2 matters. First, the acceptance of humanity into the Galactic Council. Second, the approval of a pact of protection with the Vrathari. The voting took less than 5 minutes. Species after species signaled their approval. Some had been swayed by Velrax's testimony, others by the recordings they had seen. But many, Tay suspected, had been moved by Hana's simple, honest words. The votes are recorded, Amen announced. Humanity is accepted into the Galactic Council by unanimous decision. The Pact of Protection with the Vrathari is approved by majority vote. The chamber erupted in sounds of celebration and approval. Tay felt Juno grab his hand, squeezing tight. They had done it. Humanity had a place in the galaxy. Hana ran back to Tay, the cubs bounding alongside her. He scooped her up, holding her close. "You were amazing," he whispered into her hair. "I just told them the truth, Papa," Hana said. "That friends help each other." Velrax approached, and Tay gently set Hana down. The massive chieftain lowered himself to one knee, bringing his face closer to Hana's level. "Small one," Velrax said solemnly. "You have done more for your species in 1 week than most diplomats do in a lifetime. The Vrathari are honored to call humanity our allies." Hana smiled up at him. "Does this mean the cubs can visit Earth now?" Velrax's expression, difficult to read on an alien face, seemed almost amused. "Yes, small one. We will arrange the first cultural exchange. Our cubs are eager to see your homeworld." The cubs chirped excitedly at this, their tails swishing. Kresh nudged Hana gently. "You show us Earth? Show us your home?" "Yes," Hana said excitedly. "I'll show you my room, and my toys, and the park, and the beach, and everything." Over the next hours, the formalities continued. Treaties were signed. Agreements were made. But the real story, the one that would be told throughout the galaxy, was simpler. A small human child had sneezed. Alien predators had protected her. And in that moment, 2 species had found common ground. Several months later, the first Vrathari embassy opened on Earth. It was located in the city where Tay and his daughters lived, specifically requested by the Vrathari delegation. The cubs, now officially designated as cultural ambassadors, spent half their time at the embassy and half at Hana's home. Tay watched from his kitchen window as Hana played in the backyard with the cubs. They had learned to be incredibly careful with human objects and human children. Other kids from the neighborhood had gradually overcome their fear, and now it was common to see a group of human children playing games with 4 young Vrathari. "It still seems like a dream," Juno said, coming to stand beside her father. She was preparing to start university soon, where she would study xenobiology and interspecies relations. "Which part?" Tay asked. "The part where your sister became an intergalactic diplomat? Or the part where we have alien ambassadors living in our guest room?" Juno laughed. "All of it. Everything changed." Because Hana sneezed. "No," Tay said thoughtfully. "Everything changed because when Hana sneezed, she didn't see monsters. She saw potential friends. And the cubs saw someone who needed protection. Sometimes the most powerful diplomacy is just being open to connection." In the backyard, Hana was teaching a new game to the cubs and several human children. It was a hybrid game, combining human and Vrathari elements. The cubs had learned to retract their claws completely during play. The human children had learned to recognize Vrathari body language and sounds. Kresh made a thrumming sound, which now meant, "Good job," when Hana successfully completed a difficult part of the game. She beamed up at him. "I did it. Did you see, Kresh?" "Saw," Kresh confirmed, his translator rendering his chirps into standard English. "Small pack leader is strong, smart, good friend." The term small pack leader had become the cubs' nickname for Hana. It was said with affection and respect. A news drone flew overhead, recording the scene for yet another documentary about the human Vrathari alliance. There had been dozens of them, all trying to explain how humanity had gone from unknown species to protected allies in less than a year. But Tay knew the real story was much simpler. It was about a small girl who needed help, and alien cubs who chose to give it. It was about adults who followed the wisdom of their young. It was about finding common ground across seemingly impossible differences. That evening, as Tay tucked Hana into bed, the cubs lay on the floor beside her. They had their own sleeping area in the guest room, but they often insisted on sleeping near Hana, still protective even in the safety of her own home. "Papa," Hana said sleepily. "Do you think other humans will make friends with other aliens like I did?" "I hope so," Tay said, brushing hair from her forehead. "You showed everyone that it's possible. Now others will try too." "Good," Hana murmured. "Everyone should have friends, even if they're different." Hana, as she drifted off to sleep, Kresh raised his head slightly, his 4 eyes watching over her. The other cubs were already asleep, but Kresh always took the first watch. It was his nature as the most protective of the group. Tay quietly thanked him in the Vrathari language he had been learning. Kresh made a soft sound of acknowledgement. In the months since that first meeting, Earth had changed. Humans walked alongside aliens in the streets. Children learned about dozens of species in school. Technology and knowledge flowed freely through the new alliance. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy, not through conquest or dominance, but through connection and cooperation. And it had all started because a tiny human sneezed once, and 4 alien cubs decided she was worth protecting. The Pact of the Vulnerable, as historians would later call it, became the model for how humanity approached all their interstellar relationships. Not as warriors or conquerors, but as friends and allies, as beings who recognized that strength came in many forms, and that vulnerability, handled with courage and honesty, could be its own kind of power. Tay turned off the light and quietly left the room. Through the doorway, he could see his youngest daughter sleeping peacefully, surrounded by alien protectors who loved her as fiercely as he did. The galaxy was vast and often dangerous, but humanity had found allies. They had found friends, and most importantly, they had found a way to survive, not despite their weakness, but because of their ability to turn that weakness into connection. One small sneeze had changed everything, and in bedrooms across Earth, human children slept safely, dreaming of stars and strange new friends, while in the embassies and ships above, alien species looked at humanity with new understanding. The galaxy had seen countless warrior races. It had seen empires rise and fall through strength of arms, but it had never seen anything quite like humanity, these strange, vulnerable beings who survived through the simple revolutionary act of making others care. And in caring, they had changed the galaxy forever.